live. And this is the day after the most startling, the most illicit, the most illegal, and the most un-American trial that at least I can remember. I'm sure if we go back into prior generations when we were a slave nation or whatever, we're going to find ones that are worse, or maybe in the Old West when people were lynched. But it's really hard for me to think of one that was ever a recorded trial that was as, well, I mean, completely illicit. It begins with the fact that he was never charged with a crime, and then eventually he was never convicted of a crime. That's all a fiction. That is a Democrat dictatorship fiction, that he was charged with a crime and convicted of a crime, at least in any way that is recognized by American or English law. They never charged him with a crime, and they never proved a crime unanimously. It really is quite startling that the person who is the president of the United States can never get anything right. I just heard him earlier today say that this was a unanimous verdict. Well, I don't know, where was he with the discussion for 2 days that the judge was going to tell them they didn't have to be unanimous with regard to the underlying crime. Hence, we don't know. I mean, there were 3 of them. I don't expect that Biden would retain that with his demented brain, but at least he should have known that there was a dispute about a unanimous verdict. The verdict was not unanimous. They were told that with regard to the 3 different possibilities of felony, which was state tax evasion, violation of state campaign laws, and violation of federal campaign laws, they didn't have to be unanimous. As long as the whole number added up to 12, 4 for one, 4 for the other, 4 for the other. That is completely contrary to, as Justice Gorsuch just outlined 4 years ago, 14 binding Supreme Court decisions and 800 years of American and English constitutional law. Englishmen in 14th century England were told, or their juries were told, that they couldn't be convicted unless the juries were unanimous on every aspect of the trial. There's no exception to that. And Justice Gorsuch in 2020, in Ramos versus the United States, made clear that there'd be no exceptions, even in the states, when he reversed the practice in Louisiana of having a non-unanimous verdicts, a practice that came out of and from racism. Also the same in Oregon, so that blacks could be more easily convicted. I don't know if Mershon understands the derivation and the only exception in American law where non-unanimous verdicts were used. I don't know if he's a scholar of any kind. I doubt it. But it really is rather peculiar that the party that throws around charges of racism is relying on racist precedents in order to give Donald Trump an unfair trial. And that isn't the worst of it. It just gets worse and worse and worse. The worst part of it is the United States used to be a nation of laws. It was something we could be very proud of, and not a nation of men. Now, what does that mean? What that means is, just because you don't like a defendant, just because the defendant is on the other political party, just because you contributed money to stop that defendant from being president, just because you contributed money to his opponent who wants to desperately defeat him in any way possible and has already participated in illegal means to stop him, and who's led a life of crime, the law governs the trial. The man or woman doesn't get to make it up. Well, this is exactly what the acting judge in this case, a rather lowly state Supreme Court justice, in the sense that most of them, all of them, are politically selected by the very partisan bosses of the different boroughs in the Democrat Party. None of them are truly elected. Engoron was elected 3 times with no opposition because the Democrat dictatorship party rigged it that way. So then when they want them to corrupt themselves in a political trial, they're available for that. This has been so in New York almost, from the beginning. You can go back 150, 160 years ago. This is what Boss Tweed was all about. This city has been a one-party city. In the time of Lincoln, it was a one-party city. State voted for Lincoln, but not the city. So this was a very, very devastating blow, not to Donald Trump, but to all of us who rely on those rules in a criminal trial remaining fixed and steady. That's why we're a nation of laws. Men don't get to change those rules because they have prejudices and biases. He changed them all. He changed one that's existed for 800 years. And one that has very interestingly been reaffirmed very recently in a decision in which 3 of the so-called liberal judges on the court, or was it 2? I've forgotten. I think Kagan was on the other side. The other 2 voted that in all trials in America, it has to be unanimous. Now, Kagan would have reversed this case too, because the only exceptions that were allowed were the 2 states that had statutes that allowed non-unanimous verdicts. And that would be Oregon and Louisiana. New York has no such statute. New York complies with the American rule, the English rule, the common law rule of unanimity with regard to all aspects of the case. It breaks my heart to see this because I know how big a blow this is to America as a lawful republic. This is what the law means. It means that although people break the law, unfortunately, in Democrat cities, sometimes in recent times in record numbers, we can count on our judges enforcing the law. Well, this judge made a mockery of our legal system and is being laughed at by any serious jurist in the country. Or maybe they're crying because it does affect their standing and the way they're looked at it. Like when a police officer does something wrong, it is really unfair that it's held against every police officer in many ways, right? But it is, and that happens, and that's what's happening now with judges. I mean, there are many, many judges in this country that are decent judges. They wouldn't be on the Manhattan Supreme Court because they'd have to get through a political boss, and they might have freedom to be judges in every other area, but not in political cases. The political bosses don't put them there and then not have control over them in a case involving the Democrat Party. Now, usually it doesn't extend to a case of this magnitude. It's usually cases involving gerrymandering, for example, where the corruption is legendary. But when you have a guy like Mershon who's hanging on by his fingernails, he is not a properly elected Supreme Court justice, because Supreme Court justices are elected. Now, elected in form only, they don't have opponents. If you'd like to think that's an election, you can. But at least they go through the form. This guy has been dragged on for 22 or 23 years. He obviously has a very low threshold of ethics. He's got his daughter out there making millions off this case. Not only that, he went so far as to give his daughter's clients all access passes to the trial. I mean, maybe afterwards we should take a look at Ticketron and see if he was offering tickets on Ticketron for anybody that will retain. I think it's Lauren Marchand. I'm not sure, but I mean, she's the Democrat political operative. For example, she represents Dan Goldman, who's the latest biggest liar in the House, taking Shifty Schiff's role as he tries to move on to the Senate. Well, Goldman's mother just happened to be at the trial with a choice seat and an all-access pass. And her son, pays money to Merchand's daughter. The same thing is true of one of the high executives of the Brennan Center, which uses her for lobbying. And we can go on and on. I mean, it's a scam. These people are not honest. I hope you realize that. A judge doesn't do what he did if you're honest. First of all, an honest judge would have recused himself from this case. You can't sit on a case where you contributed money to stop the defendant movement. I don't care who the defendant is. The guy contributed money to a Stop Trump movement. I mean, the threshold of ethics is non-existent when you, like it was for Obama with Biden and Biden's son getting millions from one of the crookedest guys in Ukraine. I mean, these people have no ethics. And then it's much worse than that. I mean, the biggest crime and the only crime really established during this case is the conspiracy of the Democratic crooks to stop Trump in any way possible. And this isn't isolated. This trial in New York is chapter, however you want to count it, 10. I mean, it's of a piece with the three other phony trials. The two Smith trials brought by a guy who specializes in phony trials. I mean, there's no doubt that Garland picked him because he has a record of framing innocent people, which is what he did in the case that was reversed by the Supreme Court 9-0. If you had any interest, even in the appearance of fairness, if you had even a sense of that, you would never appoint Smith to prosecute Trump when his case was reversed, when he did it to another Republican based on his misconduct. So it tells you in everything you need to know about Garland being in completely bad faith. He selected a guy who has a record as an unethical prosecutor, much like Weissman had such a record. Weissman is now a commentator who made the very intelligent comment that he has a man crush on Judge Merchan. I'm not sure I know what a man crush is, but if whatever it is, and if Weissman is involved, there's something weird about it, because this guy and Smith, very similar. The unethical things that he did during the Trump investigation, and then the unethical things that he did in prior cases, which have been the subject of books. I mean, he's another one you wouldn't have selected for the investigation of Trump. You're interested in a fair and impartial investigation because he has a history of the opposite. So the other very, very horrible thing about this, or maybe very helpful politically, Donald Trump can stand in front of any audience he wants and say, I wasn't convicted of a discernible crime. We don't know we don't know. It's multiple choice. It's multiple choice. And it's not even multiple choice because we don't know if they were unanimous on any one of those three so-called predicate crimes. So in that case, since we don't know, the case got to be reversed because the instruction is glaring legal error. That you don't have to be unanimous with regard to whether it was tax evasion that he was furthering, or federal campaign finance, or state finance laws. They were told they don't have to be unanimous on those. End of case. I mean, the minute the judge says that, and then the jury operates under those instructions, the verdict isn't worth the paper it's written on. Unless you'd like to, just forget the unanimity requirement, which is sacred to American law. And I don't know where he comes up with this idea that there are multiple ways to get to the result. Probably some confusion because he really isn't a very good lawyer or a particularly intellectual guy. Probably some confusion over the continuing criminal crime statutes, or the RICO statutes, where they do permit verdicts, not even verdicts, they're sort of advisory on additional predicates. But before you get there, you have to be unanimous on 3 or 4, depending on the state and the statute. So you'd have to be unanimous here. You'd have to be unanimous on 1. And if you wanted to say, the other 2 as well, you wanted to inform the judge of that, well, that's fine. It's not part of the verdict, but I mean, this interpretation is asinine and extremely disturbing if we are a country that has a constitution. The statute says, with an intent to defraud that includes an intent to commit another crime, or to aid or conceal the commission thereof. It doesn't say multiple crimes. It says a crime. 1. You go find many multiple crimes if you want, but you got to find 1 unanimously. Otherwise, you get a Soviet verdict, or a Nazi verdict, or a fascist verdict. You don't get an American verdict. It is not surprising that it appears as if this has been a tremendous a boon to the Trump campaign. They raised so much money on. Well, first of all, they got immediately a couple of massive contributions, an $800,000 contribution through an anonymous donor arranged by Lee Zeldin. I see Miriam Adelson, and they are friends of mine. Miriam, I know for a very, very long time, and of course I knew her husband Sheldon as well. But Miriam, who I guess has gone back and forth a little bit on Trump, has committed what I think she described as massive contributions. You might remember that in the last election, I think he put an $80 million, the one before 150. So the idea that, and even before this, Trump raised more than Biden in April. So if he needs money to make up for whatever damage that has been done unfairly by this, he's going to have plenty of it. And who knows if it's going to lead to any damage. Well, this trial was not conducted, and you can't even pretend this trial was conducted under the rule of law. And when we come back, we'll take you through it and show you what you need to know about this disgusting and illicit, really attack on you and me and the rights that we have when we go into court. I'll be right back. Here we are, pretty much at the beginning of the process here at this pristine, I call it a laboratory. It's not like a factory, it's like a hospital. This is the beginning of the process for roasting. Deep green, very good quality. Most people don't use this quality. We deal with small farmers because they like to know who we're dealing with. They give us the highest quality, all organic, non-GMO. You should know all Arabica beans.
no robusto, all Arabica. They're going to go into the roaster, and it'll get roasted for about 20 minutes or so. Oh my goodness, look at these. My goodness. You're going to want to specially order these. This is what goes into Rudy's coffee.
This is Rudy Giuliani back again with America's Mayor Live. I think we've made the point that we don't have a crime here that we can describe. We have a multiple choice, not decided in any one aspect unanimously. Therefore, unless you want to go back to like 1200, and maybe even before 1200 they were doing it, I don't know. I can go back to 1300, but I can't quite get back to William the Conqueror. Maybe if we go to Normandy on D-Day, we can ask some people there, back in the 10th and 11th century, did you have unanimous verdicts? I mean, it really is startling to me, and I was thinking about this all night, that some person in England during the time of Henry VII or VIII was entitled to the protection of unanimous verdict, and Trump didn't get it. I mean, we were just coming out of the Dark Ages at that point, right? It was before the Renaissance really emerged. This is extraordinary. The lengths to which they will go. The crimes they've already committed in order to frame this man are only, I think, this bad because they've never been held to account. It may be that Donald Trump, who now, he can really very strongly defend himself against these claims, but these frivolous claims by idiot Biden that he's going to be a dictator, by saying, I didn't do what you did. I didn't prosecute my opponent. And boy, I had lots of reasons to do it, and I had lots of people, including this guy, urging me to do it. And it was a close decision because she's committed some. You wouldn't have trouble, describing the crime she committed. Let's put it that way. Nor would you have trouble being unanimous on the fact that she destroyed 33,000 emails, or that she paid $1.1 million for a completely fraudulent document to stop a person from being president. And then she continued to participate as that fraudulent document was used to remove a lawfully elected president, or the fruits of that document. We'd have no trouble convicting her any or all of those. And nothing about it being a close case, or you have to take you wouldn't have to have taken a misdemeanor that was barred by the statute of limitations and combine it with a felony, but you don't know which felony, and you don't tell her which felony. I mean, you could have tried it just straight out the way I tried lots of other people and convicted them, and convict her in a minute. When Comey finished describing the evidence against her in that terrible thing that he did, fixing the case, I mean, the idiot put together the strongest case you could imagine. You're sitting there saying, my goodness, he's going to prosecute her. And then he says, no prosecutor would bring this case. And then I put my hand up and I go, I would. Everyone I know would, and you would have too when you work for me, Comey. Something happened to you. So the Post has a headline, Prostituting Justice. Everybody who cares about our system of laws and the sacredness of it is trying to find a way to describe to you how serious this is. In politics, we have so many fights and so many. This is way beyond. This is an attack on your rights. If you're on the wrong side of things, you're going to be treated the same way he was. I was. Peter Navarro was. This same poor excuse for a judge is going to try Bannon. I think he has another Trump trial. I mean, he's interested in them because he wants to stop Trump. He expressed that with a campaign contribution. So don't tell me this isn't political. You think I'm a fool? Uh, is this political? What's the sentencing date? What's the sentencing date, Ted?
July 11th.
When's the convention? A week later, right?
4 days later.
Oh, 4 days later. Yeah. Oh, gosh. I guess he didn't put it on the same day. And all through the trial, we can find examples like that. And maybe the sentence will be that, Trump has to stay in all day. So they'll try to make him be a candidate but they better watch out because if Biden could win from a basement, it could be that Trump could win from a basement. He's a lot more exciting a candidate from a basement than Biden. Did you know that I once offered to for the president, to debate in Biden's basement? They got really angry at me. They said I was maybe that's why they want to put me in jail. They said I was being snarky and sarcastic, and I was actually. I'm not even sure I asked him in advance because I just sort of threw it out there, but I knew he would do it. Look how fast he agreed to. Look how fast he agreed to the debate going into the lion's den. I mean, I'm not sure I would have agreed to that. But CNN, I mean, first of all, they're going to have oxygen tanks for him, all kinds of weird medicines. I don't know if you heard him today, but I was listening to him, trying to figure out what the heck he was saying about Trump. He sounded like he was asleep. They must have not given him the. Maybe they didn't keep him in the casket long enough and give him the Dracula stuff that they give him when they make him look a little better. But I just want to drive home one other thing because the law is based on not Judge Mershon's how he changes things or lies to you about things. It's based on the law, and we do things like we go back and we read precedents. So I want to show you the precedent, the main one. And this is the Supreme Court opinion in Ramos versus Louisiana. Now, immediately, as I pointed out last night, that a sort of second-rate, third-rate judge who isn't even elected, an acting judge, probably doesn't have the attention span to read something like this. This is 248 pages, I think. But actually, he could have gotten away with reading the 28 pages of the majority opinion because that's the binding law. And it would have told him he can't do what he's doing. And it does give him a nice, interesting history of how what he's doing has only been done, really, and only gotten away with in pursuant to racism. So the non-unanimous verdict in America has a connection to the Ku Klux Klan, which I guess makes Biden feel kind of warm and fuzzy because of the eulogies he gave for the Ku Klux Klan members. But all the rest of us kind of figure, well, that's pretty bad law. And what Gorsuch points out is that when they put the guarantee of a fair and impartial jury in the Constitution, what came along with that was the unvarying practice, then a couple hundred years old, of a unanimous verdict. One of these requirements was unanimity. Wherever we might look to determine what the term trial by an impartial jury meant at the time of the Sixth Amendment's adoption, whether it's the common law, state practices in the founding era in the colonies, or opinions and treatises written soon afterwards, the answer is unmistakable. A jury must reach a unanimous verdict in order to convict. It emerged in 14th century England. It's contained in Blackstone. It was against this backdrop that James Madison drafted the Sixth Amendment. By that time, unanimous verdicts have been required for about 400 years. He goes on to point out that the Supreme Court has reaffirmed this and ordered this 13 times. And what's wrong with the case in Louisiana where there wasn't a unanimous verdict and why it had to be reversed. And just in case, I mean, in a case before this, a case that preceded us, as I said, 13 times the court made it clear it had to be a unanimous verdict. But in case you think, well, little parts of it don't have to be unanimous, the Supreme Court in Andrus versus the United States said that unanimity in jury verdicts is required in criminal cases. This requirement extends to all means everything, all issues, character or degree of the crime, guilt and punishment. All issues that are left to the jury must be unanimous. It doesn't say some. It doesn't say you can do 444. It doesn't say if there are three possible crimes that a person committed, although the statute requires one, you can find one or the other and not tell us how you found it or what you found. It says you're going to have to be unanimous on at least one of those. And I mean, this whole case should have been dismissed because we're playing a guessing game anyway at the time of the conclusion of the trial. Whoever has gone to trial in America and not been told what the crime is that they committed? Trump was not told the crime he committed. He was actually given, at one point, 4 choices. That alone should have resulted in the dismissal of the case. The chief judge of New York should have come down from on high and ended the case and said, we don't tolerate cases that violate precedents that are 800 years old, even for stumble-bum judges like you. No wonder we never put you up for nomination. Well, the verdict certainly shook up the presidential campaign. And there was a lot of talk right afterwards. What would happen? Would it hurt Trump, help Trump? Or would it be so much having happened, have not much of an impact? Well, I still don't think we know in terms of polls and the electorate, but we sure know in terms of popular reaction by those who have an open mind to it that it's been extraordinary, expressing itself in, I believe, as of this morning, when the computer went down, they're up to $38 million, much of it from small donors, and more than a little less than a third of it from new donors, 30% new donors, which, to me, as a veteran of many, many campaigns, is very, very exciting. When you can raise 38 million, having been convicted, and roughly a third of them are new. Whoa. And if you saw the turnout today in front of Trump Plaza, you would say that the poll that came out, now this poll was probably taken before the verdict, so we're not arguing that it reflects that, but Trump has now dropped Biden's lead in New York down by 7, and even less when you include the third-party candidates. So very interesting. In some polls, the third-party candidates help Biden. Some cases they help Trump. Kind of interesting that Trump is more open to the idea of Kennedy participating in the debates than Biden is, because from the polls it's hard to tell, because you see both. The Virginia poll actually looked like you put Kennedy in, and Biden is tied with Trump, which is extraordinary in Virginia, but then he gets a 3-point lead. Whereas in New York, it switches by about 2 points in Trump's favor. So, but there's no question this is going to have a big impact on the campaign. And this is too early to tell. And I'm not going to be one of those who just jumps off on the money itself and say, well, that shows, because, there are obviously a lot of people that vote don't get involved in the contributing of money. But it does show that a lot of people got the point that this was a fix. That this was an extraordinarily anti-American thing to do. And yet another reason for not voting for Biden, unless you want a dictatorial America. You want to go to trial like that? You want to go to trial where they don't tell you what you're charged with? And the jury can be less than unanimous, and you don't know where or how they're less than unanimous? You want to go to trial where they rule against you on everything and for the government on everything? Where they don't allow you to present an expert witness on what constitutes campaign finance violation, but you can get convicted of it on less than a unanimous finding by the jury? I mean, you put that all together, my God, you could teach a whole law school class on this and then just point out if you did the opposite, you'd be following the law. It'd be an interesting way to do it. The kids might pay more attention if it's done that way. Well, we're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back. Delivers on its promise to do good and never forget the sacrifices America's greatest heroes have made for us. Heroes who risked their lives to keep our communities and our country safe. Heroes like United States Marine Corps Captain and pilot John Jeremy Sachs. Captain Sachs sustained fatal injuries when his military aircraft crashed during training, killing him and 5 other service members. He's remembered by loved ones as courageous, brilliant, and devoted to his career, family, and friends. John is survived by his wife, Amber, who gave birth to their second daughter 3 months after his death. Tunnel to Towers paid the mortgage on the family home for Amber and their 2 daughters. The foundation has helped over 1,000 military and first responder families navigate the worst of times by removing the burden of a mortgage payment. Our nation's heroes and their families need your help now more than ever. Donate $11 a month to Tunnel to Towers at T2T.org. T2T.org. That's T, the number 2T.org. T2T.org. Please donate now.
We're back.
Rudy Giuliani, back with America's Mayor Live. Obviously, there hasn't been maybe there been some flash polls taken, but there hasn't been like an authoritative poll taken after the verdict. You really have to wait 2 or 3 days to take that because you have to have a good sample and you have to make sure that everyone has found out about it. If you just pulled one off the internet right now, it could be totally different 2 or 3 days from now. This is a poll. This is a poll that goes back to right before the election, and pretty consistent with other ones. And if you can show it, can we show that, Ted? And we might as well only look at the guilty part on the left-hand side. It says if Trump is found guilty, 67% says it makes no difference. And then less likely to vote for him, 17%. More likely, 15%. That is a statistically irrelevant difference. It really means you can pretty much conclude from this poll, and it's one poll, that it doesn't make a difference. There are people now saying that it might help him because the point that this was an unfair, politically motivated trial from start to finish has really gotten through. Particularly with, American people, there's certain things they just know. I would imagine it was very startling to them to hear that you could find him guilty on less than a unanimous verdict. I mean, aside from the 2 states that for racist reasons did it, he'd be like the only American ever found guilty like that, or Englishman in 800 years. and they're not they don't have a two-tier system. I mean, the question is he going to go to jail? That's another question that's asked. With Mershon, I don't discount it because unfair is a very mild description of just how biased and just how beholding he is to the Democrat Party and just how willing he is to violate the, sacred precedents, not just laws, but constitutional precedents of, monumental importance to the way we're viewed as a country of laws. But would any of you want to be in a trial and be in the position that Trump was in, knowing this guy wanted you convicted from day one? He picked jurors that way. He overruled every objection of your lawyers and sustained just about every objection of the defense. He wouldn't let you put an expert witness on to explain how this was not a federal campaign violation, although they were invited to convict you on that on less than a unanimous verdict. And by the way, even if you say, well, you shouldn't have had an expert, they opened the door to it because Cohen testified, who's a lawyer, disbarred, but still a lawyer, that it was. And I think Pecker, I'm not sure of that, I think I remember Pecker saying that he believed it was. But the judge refused to charge them that it wasn't. And the judge refused many, many requests by the Trump team, which will say to any impartial court that he was true for all the reasons why he should have been recused. That he should have been recused because he was a pro-Biden, stop Trump, dedicated person with a daughter making a fortune off stop Trump politicians. Also, a daughter that was putting out very, very derogatory, whatever you call them, little paintings and Trump in prison gear. I mean, imagine that. You're sitting there at a trial, your liberty's at stake, and you find out the daughter, adult daughter of the judge, is sending out pictures of you already in prison gear. And you're supposed to believe that that guy's going to give you a fair trial. Oh, and by the way, he gave money to a Stop You organization. That's... How can anybody take this verdict seriously? And how can anyone not think that this constitutes now maybe the main reason to vote against Biden, to protect our right to a fair trial? Because if you're viewed the wrong way, this will happen to you. I can tell you that from personal experience. I've been indicted twice for things that I did 1,000 times as a lawyer. I indicted for lying when I was arguing for my client based on records that I had. They may have had, in some cases, different records. How many trials have different experts? You know, just from reading the newspapers, that a coroner comes up for the government and then one comes up for the defense. They have two different versions. Well, I guess, if the Democrat dictators decide that one version is the right one and the other is the wrong one, you as a lawyer are going to go to jail if you argue for your client. Well, I mean, we just turned into a dictatorial courtroom. So what's next now for Trump? Could he go to jail? Sure, he could, but I would say that the protection here is quick appeals, meaning I was thinking even yesterday, if Mershon were to remand him, which is, look, a judge who tells them they can reach less than a unanimous verdict could do anything. I would say it's only public opinion that stopped him from putting Trump in jail. He seems like he hates him and despises him and would do anything to humiliate him. But I think he also has a feeling, or maybe the Democrats are whispering in his ear, he doesn't have like a law clerk sitting on his lap like Engeron does, who tells him what to do. But I bet there's somebody that tells him what to do. And they probably have told him, this is not working out 100% the way we want it to. So you put him in jail, we're going to look terrible. Although they did have meetings at Rikers Island to prepare for the eventuality that he'd be remanded. Now, had he been remanded, it probably wouldn't have lasted long, but he could have maybe kept him in there for 2 or 3 days, maybe. You could go right to the court, right to the intermediate court, which is the appellate division in New York, and ask a judge there to stay it and to enjoin it and to let you out. You could go to the Court of Appeals, which is the highest court, and then you go to the Supreme Court. Probably Justice Sotomayor is the circuit justice, but don't think because she's a Democrat that on an issue like this she can be anything like Merchan, because she's not. I mean, this is a pretty much cut and dry issue in a white collar case with a non-offender without a record and a person where there's no history of fleeing or threat that they're going to flee, and a case that you certainly could make out one of the most powerful cases of a likelihood of success on the merits, which is the key finding that you have to make for an injunction. So we're going to take a break, and we will be back for our final segment that will include the mayor's final thoughts.
We're having the biggest sale ever on overstock clearance and brand new products. For example, save 60% on our Goose Down comforters, the best comforters ever. They go perfectly with our MyPillow bed sheets and duvet covers. Save 25% on our brand new kitchen towels. They're made with the same technology as our famous My Towels. Our initial quantities are extremely low, so get them now before they go. Our seasonal flannel sheets are finally in. You save up to 50%, and they sell out fast every year, so order now. They're truly the best flannel sheets you'll ever sleep on. Or save up to 80% on all our clearance items. And this is where it gets even better. For a limited time, your entire order ships absolutely free. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use that promo code to get deep discounts on all MyPillow products. And for a limited time, your order ships absolutely free.
This is Rudy Giuliani back with the final segment of America's Mayor Live. And what's the consequence of this guilty verdict in the bigger sense? I saw it very, very powerfully. President Trump today said, and he said this before, but he seemed to say it with much more emotion than ever before. This really, 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 this isn't about me. It's about you. And what he means by that is if they can do it to him, they can do it to you. And really, we shouldn't pretend like they haven't. And I shouldn't pretend, well, they've done it to me and to some of his top people. They're about to do it to Bannon, right? Or they actually have already done it to Bannon. They've indicted him, and he's going to go to trial in front of this completely biased judge. They've done it to a lot of people that don't have that kind of association with Trump. Just support him. What about all the January 6th people? My goodness, what they did to them. I mean, these people, it turns out, were far less guilty of anything than the people who protested during the what is it called, Ted? The Summer of Love.
They call it the 2020, the Summer of Love.
Yeah, some love. I mean,
yeah.
Property damage in the billions, fires all over the place, police officers dead, numerous police officers and firefighters seriously injured, and property values killed, and certain communities dead. Huh. And then Biden yesterday asked a question, what would have happened if the people who stormed the Capitol, which they didn't storm the Capitol, by the way, many of them were let in and even escorted. But whatever, even if you want to say that, what would happen if the people that stormed the Capitol were black? The answer is they'd have been let out, like they were by all of the Soros DAs when they did far worse than that and burned things down and stole property. And I don't see any fires in the Capitol, and there's no question that there was an orchestrated, hysterical exaggeration of what happened there. Just the mere fact that they had a state funeral for a police officer that died the next day of natural causes, but they were desperate to attribute it to January 6th and didn't give a damn about the actual homicide that took place of Ashley Babbitt, which if you watch it on John Sullivan's tape, and you don't have serious questions about whether it's possibly a first-degree murder charge. I mean, there's no way to look at that and to come to the conclusion that the officer who did it was in fear for his life. They were actually breaking down the door and permitted to do it by the two police officers who just immediately walked away from their post. Not out of any fear either, because they had like stormtroopers all around them. You know, those cops that dress up like they're commanded by Goebbels or something. I know they get annoyed when you say that, but then don't dress that way. Particularly when you're dealing with white collar people. I mean, this is the way you arrest people with little children who were protesting abortion. That's what they do. They send the stormtroopers in. This is what you do to Roger Stone. But Roger's going to have like a gun battle with you. I mean, I was in law enforcement for a while. I don't remember anything like that. I mean, it's all done for fear. They want to make it. They want to make you afraid to support Trump. They certainly want to do that with lawyers. I mean, people in Arizona now, like the people in Atlanta before, having trouble getting lawyers. I've had conversations with lawyers because I have to get a lawyer in Arizona. They want to be paid more for a case involving Trump because they're going to lose clients. So let's tell you straight out. And there's a whole McCarthy-like thing going on here that isn't described that way because the left wing just thinks that they can do anything they want. You know, they can take away the unanimity requirement. You can do that in a criminal case. You can do anything you want. If you can try to frame a sitting president and get him out on a phony story that you purchased for $1.1 million, and nobody touches you, and you can go on and pontificate like Hillary does, and you can get all upset about people who are election deniers, and you were for 4 years. But you're protected by the media. I mean, even when Biden gets a few questions that are somewhat hostile, do you notice how he reacts? Because he's not used to. He's like a spoiled child. The questions when they ask him questions where he gets all upset. If they ask me questions like that, I'd say, "Wow, I'm getting a day off." I mean, they don't ask him tough. They're afraid to ask him tough questions. They're afraid that the answer will be, and he won't know what he's talking about. So let's just make one comment on the other thing that he did during his inarticulate press statement that sounded like his brain wasn't working. He's decided that Israel has agreed to a 6-week ceasefire, a withdrawal from Hamas. So they'll give up all the positions that they fought so hard for in order to destroy Hamas. They'll contradict the statement made by their chief of staff yesterday that this is going to go on until the end of 2024, or maybe even into 2025 in order to be successful in wiping out Hamas. If they were to stop now, it would just rejuvenate. The 6 weeks will be used to save Hamas. Make no mistake about it. That's why he's doing it. He doesn't care about the hostages. He never talks about them. And when he talks about it, he gets their names wrong. And he thinks they're in the audience and they're hostage. I mean, the guy's got he's got as much concern for the hostages as the 13 people he got killed in Afghanistan and stood there looking at his watch. All he's concerned about is not losing those votes in Michigan. I don't think those people in Michigan will vote for him anyway, no matter what he does, because they don't trust him. But how can you trust him? He lies all the time. Way back in 1998, Sam Donaldson said, "Thank goodness he was exposed as a liar. He's too dishonest to be the president." Gee, and Sam was pretty darn Democrat, but he could be equal in his criticism when he saw dishonesty and crookedness on either side. It's very hard now, very hard to find anybody like that. And the reality is what Biden proposed today is a complete sellout of Israel. If they have to take everything out of Gaza that they put there, including Biden wants people returned to the north, where they clean out Hamas so they can reestablish themselves. This is probably the orders he has from Iran. I don't know, but if you have the slightest concern about the state of Israel, we've got a traitor in the White House. Well, we have a traitor in the United States. The Bagram Air Base alone, you don't need to know anything more than that. Giving up an air base 400 miles from China and leaving behind $85 billion worth of equipment. You don't need to know anything else but that to know that 31 million that Hunter got, where Hunter described in his own text that nobody pays attention to, that throughout the 30 years of criminality, half his salary went to his father. I mean, that was more than enough to buy Joe and have him do the bidding of China. And it is pathetic. I mean, during the campaign 3-4 years ago, he said that, he doesn't look at China. China's the arguments against China are all exaggerated, and we can have a very peaceful relationship with them. He reduced the number of questions the Chinese are asked when they come in here as illegals from whatever he had reduced them to already, maybe 12. They used to be like 50. Then he reduced to only 4 because the illegals weren't getting in fast enough illegally. Well, I want to thank you very, very much for tuning in tonight. And tonight I'm having another birthday celebration, the last one, I hope, because I've had too many. And so I'm going to we'll quit a little early so we can get to it. And please don't forget on Sunday morning at 10, Uncovering the Truth with Dr. Maria, and then we'll be back at 3 and 8 on X for the Rudy Giuliani Show, and of course this one, our big one, America's Mayor Live. This weekend, a lot of prayers, huh? A lot of prayers for Israel. They're being sold out by Biden. And for the United States of America, whose system of justice has now been ruined, just like our educational system has been ruined by these, what are definitely Marxist